It's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Janice Taylor Peak, and we're going to be discussing her amazing book, Grandmother's Cherry Cake. That's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And people, I do want to take a quick opportunity and point out that Janice was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishers in the business. Of course, I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. Now, if you are a writer out there or you know someone that has also written a narrative and you need help moving it, I'm going to give you some advice here. Contact ARP, okay? They're one of the best in the business to do it. They specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and see what they can do for you. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Janice here on the line. Now, right there in the title, Grandmother's Cherry Cake. Well, you have an idea of what we're going to discuss. And of course, when you do your research on it, it'll get solidified to a certain degree. Now, I'm just going to take a second and point it out there. Like, listen, my grandmother didn't have a cherry cake that she was known for, but this book, even though we're going to be talking about Janice's grandmother and particular experiences that she had, I think everybody's grandmother out there has at least one thing that they can always remember them by, right? This narrative has such a nostalgic feel to it. Now, it's a children's narrative, but I'll be the first to point it out. It makes me, as a full-grown adult, want to read it, okay? Because it just brings me back to times that I spent with my own grandmother, and she's going to love it when she hears this interview because my grandmother was known for her jag, right? It was we call it jag, but it was her rice that she made. And listen, it sounds like something simple like Benji, rice? What? No, you have not tasted rice until you've tasted my grandmother's rice, okay? It was something to be admired. And everyone in the family, whenever we have any get-togethers, I'm telling you, it's a common thing where it's like we're not eating unless we have some of Nanny's jag, okay? And Nanny, I love you. When you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. And I love what this book represents, okay? Because not only is it all about Janice's experience with her grandmother, but one of the underlying messages and what it represents is all about thinking outside the box. Because, listen, sometimes things may not go according to plan, okay? They may not go how you want it to go. But that doesn't mean that you just stop and you give up on the process. That just means that you find out other ways of getting it done. And that's all I'm going to say on it, because at the end of the day, this is Janice's book. She's written it. It's her life. She's lived it. And she's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So let's bring her here with us. Janice, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Benji. It is a pleasure to be on your show today, to get the opportunity to talk about Grandmother's Cherry Cake.
Well, listen, Janice, thank you very much for your kind words. Listen, the honor and the pleasure is all ours, okay? I really do mean that. I think what your book represents here is something special. And everyone out there, children and adults alike, the moment they embark upon this journey that you've set forth on, we know and we have a special place in our heart. Grandmothers and grandparents, and let's give some granddads some love here too. Grandparents in particular, they hold a special place, right? And rightfully so. Absolutely. Because our parents, as amazing as they are, not taking anything away from them, grandparents are just meant to spoil their grandchildren. That's kind of their job. That's what they're there for. And they hold a special place in our hearts. And I really love what you're doing here. And I love the fact that we have an opportunity to have you as a guest to explain it. Before we go into the book, though, Janice, I know we have a lot of information to cover. Please start off by telling myself and our listening audience a little bit more about your background.
Well, a little bit about my background. I born in Pennsylvania, Steel City, Pittsburgh. Left there at the age of 12, moved to Hartford, Connecticut, and stayed there until 2013, and then relocated here in San Antonio, Texas. So that's where I'm currently living. I have 4 children, 4 grandchildren, and 1 great grand. I'm so excited about the little people, as I call them. So, those grandbabies and the great grand.
Absolutely.
Love them.
Absolutely. Well, listen, first and foremost, I'm a New England boy myself, so I'm very familiar with Connecticut. Have a lot of family that has been through there, not currently anymore. They've all moved out, but a lot of family all across New England. So very, very well acquainted with that. And listen, congratulations on what sounds like a beautiful family that you've constructed and built around you. And of course, you're a grandmother yourself now, which is a wonderful thing as well.
Absolutely.
Janice, without further ado, the anchor for today's interview is all about your fantastic narrative, Grandmother's Cherry Cake. Tell us a little bit more about it, please.
Grandmother's Cherry Cake, that was the event with my grandmother. I would say I was about somewhere around 7, 8 years old. And that event, grandmother had 12 children of her own, so there was a lot of grandchildren around. And our parents would drop us off at grandmother's house. And that particular day, she had a lot of grandkids in the house, and I was the oldest grand. Even though there were other grandchildren older than me, that particular day, I was the oldest grandchild in the house. Everybody else was younger than me. Mm-hmm. And so she was saying, well, what are we going to do today? And I'm like, I don't know. Grandmother, So she decided she's going to make a cake. Okay. So she sent me to the back in that day, you had little corner stores.
Yeah.
So I walked to the corner store. It wasn't even a half a block from the house. She sent me with the money to go get the cake mix. And it was dairy cake mix. So I was so excited. We're going to make this cake. And that's how that story began. That event stayed with me until adulthood. That memory kept coming back. And I was age 30 when I decided, I'm going to just get a notebook and I'm going to write about that event. Mm-hmm. And that's how I began. That was the very first story that I wrote.
Janice, I'm curious here. Why did you choose that particular event? I mean, because I'm sure you had so many experiences with your grandmother that you could have selected, but you decided on that particular one. Talk to us a little further about what inspired you to do that.
My grandmother was different. She was very, very different. When I look back on her life as an adult, I don't even think she should have been a mother or a grandmother. To me, she could have been an entertainer. Mm-hmm. Her thinking and her way of doing things was so different. It was not your typical type of person. And she was so different in how she made that cherry cake. I've never had anyone went to anyone else's house and their grandmother cooked like my grandmother. She was so different. And so, and then when I look back at grandmother, she couldn't really cook. So that's not typical, because just about everybody's grandmother, like you mentioned, your grandmother made that rice and everybody was talking about her in that right.
Yeah.
Well, that day with my grandmother, none of the children that were there was a group of us that was there in that house with her that day, but none of them remembered that day but me. And they were surprised because all the children that's in the story are still living. And none of them remembered that day and how she made that cherry cake. And we were so excited. So as children, we accept a lot. You know, we're not, as children, you're not hearing about the process. Is it perfect? Is it perfect? Is it correct? Or do you have everything? Everything, children, we're not concerned about that. And to see the way all of us were so excited at the end product that she created for us. And, so the curiosity is, I don't want to give away the story because the cover of the book is going to be different than the outcome of that cake.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to leave it at that because she was different.
Absolutely.
Very different.
Listen, smart woman there. You know what you have to do, people, okay? You want to gather the story. You want to embark upon this journey either yourself or with your children. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. Grandmother's Cherry Cake is the title you have to pick up, and Janice Taylor Peak is the author you want to thank for bringing it to your table. You know, Janice, sticking with the concept of inspiration, but now switching gears here slightly, this is not the only book that you have written, right? You are a writer. Talk to us about that love for creative writing and really where that comes from. I mean, were there artists that inspired you, other people? Tell us a little bit more about where that passion for writing comes from.
Two things, how I got inspired, it was definitely, first was my grandmother with that event, with that cake. That was the first because it kept coming back over throughout my lifetime. And then the second person, there was a reassessment teacher, believe it or not, at the unemployment office. And she had us look at ourselves and see what other talents that we had and to, tell us to go explore it and see what happens. So that was the second person who kind of inspired me to get into the story writing. And how did you become unique in it? Well, I looked at my life and my children and began to write the stories about different things, about a day in a new school. That was another experience I had as a child. My children, they, baby number one, I named my 4 children, baby number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So baby number 1 loves water. Baby number 2 goes trick-or-treating. Baby 3 and 4 makes Easter eggs. So those are true things that my writing comes from a lot of like true events, dreams, and so I just began to start writing. Got my notebook, had these stories written for years, and then so I wrote the story, Grandmother's Cherry Cake, at age 30. I didn't send it in to be copyrighted until age 62. And then at age 64, the book got published. So I am a senior, yes, sir. And I still, have many stories to tell.
Well, listen, you talk about how your books sometimes come to you in a dream, right? And the motivation and the inspiration comes there. Well, that's the next place that I wanted to go, because you have two other books that you've written, and people, you're going to want to check these out, okay? Grandmother's Cherry Cake was the anchor for today's interview, but the other two that she has written, one has been published and is out and available. The other one is still in creation. But we have one that's called Nightmare, and then the other one is The Adventures of Plaid and Stripes, the micro mini elephants. Talk to us about one of those other titles here, Janice, because listen, dealer's choice, nobody knows the books as well as you, but I'd love to give you an opportunity to go briefly into one of those narratives and learn a little bit more about them.
We all dream. Everyone who's ever lived, we've all, at some point in time in our life, have dreams. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when we wake up and we have a nightmare, we wake up, we remember some of that dream. Some part or fragment of that dream stays with you throughout that day. And that you can recall, but you can't recall about everything. In Nightmare, I woke up from a dream, and I began to text my children about this nightmare. And my son said, Ma, are you watching a movie or reading something? And I said, no, this is what happened. So I wrote the entire story in a text to my children. That's how it stayed, because he's like, how do you remember all that? So with Nightmare, it came from a dream. And everything that happened is how I wrote that story. It's a short story, but I woke up, just started texting. And that's how I recalled every detail in that nightmare. And wow. And we all have nightmares.
Yeah.
So do we wake up and start writing about it? That's the thing with Nightmare. And I know that can go, that's a all world thing. Everyone dreams. Everyone has had a nightmare somewhere in their lifetime that just stayed with you when you woke up, mm-hmm. But trying to recall all those details. And did you write about that dream? That's my thing. Did we write about that dream and start that story from that dream? So that's what happened with Nightmare. And then the other story, which I have not gotten to the publishing part yet, but it's another dream, was The Adventures of Plaids and Stripes, the micro mini elephants. Now, I tell everybody, look, I do not take drugs, illegal drugs. That dream, I'm like, what is going on? I woke up out of the dream, and that was weird. How can you dream of elephants? One is plaid, one is striped. And they're micro mini. They're so small you could put them in your pocket or your pocketbook. And I'm like, what is going on? So I woke up from that dream and I wrote it down on an envelope. I wrote down some information on the envelope, went back to sleep and woke back up and looked at what I wrote down. And I'm like, what? What is this? And I'm saying, Lord, what are you trying to tell me on this one? Because I'm not taking drugs. But, and then I put it away and I came back again and I said, okay, let's create this story. Who loves elephants? So I wanted to go to the location of India because the people in India love elephants. Mm-hmm. They have elephants for pets. They have, so let's start this story over in India and find a location in India that I'm going to begin the story. And the Plaids and Stripes are twins. Plaid is the girl, Stripes is the boy. And they both, the only thing that they have, just the same thing that they're twins, is they both have green eyes. And their mom is named Lulu Singh, and they're born on a farm. And that's all I'm going to say. Because that, when you talk adventures, we'll be here till next year.
Hey, you have it. And people, listen, I can sit here and I can talk to her for hours. Okay, there's that much content to get into, and I'm engulfed in everything that she is talking about. But you know what you have to do. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. Pick up your copies, starting with Grandmother's Cherry Cake. Check out Nightmare, but check back in frequently for The Adventures of Plaid and Stripes. The Micro Mini Elephants. All are fantastic narratives that you just want to get lost in. I'm telling you, they're for children, but I know a lot of adults that will love these books as well, because what they represent is something so fantastic. Janice Taylor Peak is the author you're gonna wanna look into. People, I'm telling you, she has a lot more on the horizon, and you're gonna want to stay on top of all of it. Get this book, add it to your shelf. Get this book and add it to someone else's, because this is just fantastic, and you just can't pass up on it. Janice, this has been an absolute pleasure, okay? Such an honor. I really do mean that. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
I thank you for that honor and getting the opportunity to just speak about it